want to tell you about the 8 lessons I take from watching the Octopus teacher. And first, I just gotta say that for me this last year, the symbol of the octopus, something about it has been really speaking to me deeply. Perhaps it's taking on 17 different rental projects, it's having multiple relationships and knowing how to stay connected during pandemic times. There's something about the octopus. But here's what I take from the film, this beautiful documentary about one man, his experience to understand one octopus. The first lesson is that everything is a relationship. He doesn't enter into the world of the octopus trying to control it, put it under a microscope and dissect it. He's trying to find himself. It's a very personal journey, and very quickly as he tells a story, I understand that he's wanting to understand this world and this being in this world. He's coming at it from a relational point of view. There's a relationship. And I think that's what drew me in. That's what disarmed me right away from the first few seconds of watching this film. Number 2, to understand someone, even as foreign as another animal that lives in a very different environment. But I'm thinking human beings, people we assume to care for or who are in our lives, whether we want them to be or not. To really understand someone and come to love them, we must make a daily devotion, a daily practice of putting ourselves in their world, studying them, watching them, being curious. And that's what he does in the film with the octopus. And it's stunning to me of how many every day he goes into that water, into that underwater forest. Every day he learns something new. I want to approach my wife like that, my daughter, people I love, people who are precious to me, my dear friends. I want to know them better. I want to understand them, watch them, be curious, be surprised. Number 3, there are always more sides to a story. What I love about the film is that there's this meta story of his relationship with the octopus, but every few minutes there's a new story, there's a mini story, there's a new discovery, there's another facet of life underwater, or the life of an octopus, or his own story. So there's so many different sides to a story. It's endless. It's endless to consider that there's so much depth in the world when we let go of one story and we start to discover many sides to a story and many different mini stories. That to me is profound. Number 4, this part was really touching for me, is he allowed himself to be changed. He allowed himself to be affected. He didn't go in there with all the armor and the suit and taking pictures from afar. He allowed himself to be touched, literally, and he allowed it to work on him and invade his dreams and his world outside of the water. It started to change. I want to practice that more. Allow myself to be affected by people who I say I love. Allow myself to be influenced, affected, moved, sensitized. That's the word he uses in the film. He allowed himself to be sensitized to this whole new world. Number 5. I think this is the part that's often hard in relationships, is to acknowledge the impact on others. Sometimes that's painful, brings up guilt or shame, and he does that in the story so nakedly. He says a few times, I was aware that I was becoming obsessed. I was aware that I was neglecting my family. And I felt relieved when I wasn't focused on the octopus. So there's an impact to everything we do, even the most beautiful things we do. When we put energy here, we take it away from there. When we love someone, we are also complicit in their life. We're responsible in some way for the relationship between us. So there's always an impact, and that's a very tender, vulnerable experience to have. But I believe that's in tune with reality. That's how reality works, and it's beautiful to see that expressed in the film by our protagonist. Number 6, he brings it back home. So he has these powerful experiences. He creates this, he discovers this bond with this otherworldly animal, and eventually he brings it home. He allows it to affect him, and he brings it to his son and to his family. And eventually you learn at the end, I don't want to spoil too much, but you learn that he brings it to a greater world to share his passion, his discovery, his wisdom, his intimate experience through the film with us. And I love that. That's the circle of life and reciprocity, is when we go deep, and when we have a profound relationship like a marriage or a father and child bond. It's not meant to stay in this tiny little bubble and hidden from the world. It's meant to be brought into the world. And the world is meant to be brought into our little microcosm. I love that he brings it home. I want to do that more. Number 7. And I think this is another profound lesson that I'm rediscovering, relearning every day, forgetting and relearning, and forgetting and relearning. It's acceptance of limits. You know, he says in the first minute of the film that he discovers there's a line that cannot be crossed. There's a boundary between you and I. Between every living being, there's a distinct consciousness. And there's a boundary that, you know, we can be in synchrony, in resonance, in love, and hold each other in great respect and regard, but there's always a line that cannot be crossed. And there's a line between life and death that is also a boundary. And there's moments that are just so poignant about how he comes to respect that life and death, the limitations that are there between him and the octopus, between him and himself, between life, humans and nature, life and death. I believe, as Stephen Jenkinson said recently, I listened to him, is an interview, he says that this is the place where elderhood and wisdom comes. Our humanity begins where we accept limitation, and that's where wisdom can start. And we live in a world that we don't want to accept our limitations. We want to live forever, be eternally young, consume everything, destroy, and just use up everything. And this is the antidote to accept our own vulnerability, fragility, to accept my own fragility and vulnerability. And I'm going to die. There's only so much I can do in a day. Time, life, everything has a limit. And everything is meant to be recycled. There's a cycle to life. There's a reciprocity to everything. And that brings me to number 8. Near the end of the film, he's swimming in the kelp forest, and he has this realization about his relationship to the natural world. And there's a sense of deep humbling and awe. There's a sense of deep awe. I think any one of us who has been in nature significantly and given up the status of being a visitor, we've actually encountered and related to nature. We have this experience, he says, something like realizing that this forest is like a brain that is 1,000 times more alive and aware than I am. This awareness of life, sacredness of life, and that we are not a visitor in nature, we are part of nature. So deep, so simple. I just want to drink that up, and when I forget that, I want to be reminded by friends, by nature, by beautiful stories like this film I want to be reminded I am a part of nature. I am not separate from her. I'm a part of my family. I'm a part of my community. I'm a part of this society. I'm not better or worse or separate or elevated. I'm a part of it. So that's what I take from this beautiful little film. And I would love to hear what came up for you as you're watching it, what you're learning. So it's all about endless learning, endless growing, discovering, and relating and evolving in this relationship. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.